What's up, everybody? Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by Alan Niven. Alan is perhaps best known as a manager for Guns N' Roses from 1986 to 1991. He was steering their career as Appetite for Destruction exploded and made the band a worldwide sensation. Of course, the reputation and notoriety of Guns N' Roses is well documented, very well known, so you can imagine what it's like trying to corral those cats. Alan Niven was the man behind it, getting it done. He also managed Great White during the peak of their success, the Once Bitten, Twice Shy era. He was with them during their debut album when they first broke out, and a number of other records. He's also a writer and composer with Great White. We didn't get a chance to touch on some of the other bands that he's managed. He managed Clarence Clemens, the saxophone player for Bruce Springsteen, at one point when Clarence put out a solo record. He managed the singer Berlin at one time.
Yeah, Terry Nunn is her name. Yeah, Berlin is her band. Yeah, and right. If you're a Top Gun nerd, the hit song "Take Your Breath Away," "Take My Breath Away," I'm getting that, one of those is right, was all over the radio, all over that. It was sold the soundtrack, sold the movie, if you ask me. And I was a fair weather fan of Berlin. I actually had one of their records, and they were kind of dark. And we talked to Alan about getting songs on the radio by independent artists, which we didn't even get to talk to him about how now in 2025 is probably a different art than it was in the 80s. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah. And I mean, Berlin was all over the place. They had a few hits in and around that, and were, even though short-lived, I feel like will show you the power and drive of if you're under the wing of Alan Niven, he's going to make some things happen. And if they don't happen under his wing, then it probably wasn't going to anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason he's with us today is he just put out a book. It's called Sound and Fury, and it is a great read. Rock and roll stories from Alan Niven. And it's not an autobiography. It doesn't run in chronological order. It's just little snapshots. It's quick and easy, 220 some pages. Each chapter is 3 to 4 to 5 pages. It's so...
which I love that.
I know, yeah. It's easy to pick up and put down. I ended up reading through it in about 2 days because I couldn't put it down. But yeah, lots of crazy Guns N' Roses stories. It's just fascinating to me when you operate at that level. I mean, the money is insane. The touring is insane. The personalities in Guns N' Roses, of course, are all insane. And then Great White, too. Every Great White song you've heard on the radio, every Great White video you saw on MTV, Alan Niven was behind that as well. And he's just a fascinating character. I love his no-holds-barred style. He's very forthcoming, and he doesn't mince words.
Yeah, I feel like there may or may not be a filter in there. But I also feel like he's telling you the truth, but he's also leaving you to question. Yeah. I think that, I mean, obviously he was an important and key player in, at least a third of your record collection. If you're if you're over 35, you probably have a lot of records he worked on, that he wrote on, that he helped create, the bug that made you go to the record store. He helped create the bug that made you get out of bed, or you heard a song on the radio that he fought to have on the radio that made you go buy the record and buy the concert ticket. And it was just an inspiring moment to have Alan Niven, the legend, on the show today. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan Niven today on the Talk Louder podcast. Well, thank you for joining us, man. Your book is fantastic. I'm just fascinated by it, and I could ask you questions all day long. I could spend hours with you, and I do hope we get time to touch on some of the other bands that you've managed and worked with in your career. But obviously, the huge elephant in the room is Guns N' Roses. Let me just ask you first of all. Because my understanding is the word on the street when Guns N' Roses was starting to form in 1986 or so, the word on the street and the word within the industry is, to put it mildly, they were actually unmanageable because they were notorious for their bad behavior and their consumption and sometimes unreliability, et cetera, et cetera. When you were first introduced to Guns N' Roses, did you instinctively see that they had undeniable potential, or did you view them as a fixer-upper project because you enjoyed the challenge?
Okay. Dave, you're in a bar.
I've done that, yeah.
You notice somebody attractive. It might be a thigh with a skirt just a little too far up, and that caught your attention. You ask them if they want a drink. They actually accept, to your surprise. You get into conversation, and you find, oh, there's a brain here. This is a good conversation. In other words, in any relationship, Dave, what I'm suggesting is there are levels that it moves through initially. And the first level for me, GN'R, was helping a friend. Because Tom Zutaut had asked me to be a part of a cattle call of management when he started looking for a manager. Then he came to me and he said, I'm having a problem finding management. Would you think about it? And of course, by that time, I'd done some research. And I'm looking at Tom and saying, you just destroyed your fucking career. This is absolutely a nightmare waiting to happen. What were you thinking? And then he came and asked a third time. And the third time he came and asked was because the president of Geffen had told him he could not start recording with the band. He had management. So he came down to my little condominium and said, Niv, would you please pretend to manage the band? And of course, I took exception to that. Pretend? You think I'd go and pretend management? What are you talking about? All right. I'll go and take a meeting for you and see what happens. And of course, what happened to me was Flash, who, to get to it quickly, was English, articulate, very charming, and I'd already just had some potential as a guitar player. And I'm looking at Slash and going, this is more interesting than I thought it was going to be. This is not just typical Sunset, Numbskull band. This guy's in this band, and I look at it a little bit more closely. And then, of course, there's Izzy. And Izzy, we were born exactly 10 years apart. So you might know somebody who has a crystal ball and plays with tarot cards and does readings and does all that, and looks into the stars and says, this was all written. They might say, they were born 10 years apart. Of course, they were going to get into a groove together, especially since Izzy was the first personality that I found myself drawn to when I went to see them play live. He had an insouciance, an unimpeachable sense of where to hold the right hand out and where to hold his right hand in as a rhythm player. And he just had a presence presence that reminded me of Keith
Yeah,
Richard.
of course.
And I found that very appealing and intriguing. And then, of course, I come to find that he is the primary writer, as far as I'm concerned, and has this unimpeachable street vernacular in the way that he wrote lyrics that I envied so hard. I used to read his stuff and go, fuck, I wish I could write like that. That's perfect. So it's layers. First it's Slash feeding a rabbit to a snake and getting through that, and then finding out that Izzy is a really good rhythm guitar player who writes incredible street songs, and then you deal with the other ones.
Right.
Yeah. So you found
With Axel, let's state the obvious. He had that voice. That voice that sounded like pure working class American rage, and it's the voice of an outlaw. Oh, wow. We have a singer at the front of this band who sounds like Billy the Kid maybe might have sounded if I heard him talk. Oh, I think we've got something going here.
Right. So, I've said this to people to this day. When Appetite for Destruction came out and subsequently exploded, I look at that record and I love it, of course, but I look at it and think to myself, this album has none of the hallmarks of a successful, marketable record. Every song... And what I mean by that is, I'm a rock and roller and I love it. You don't get me wrong, but from a commercial standpoint, every other song says fuck. The album cover depicted a rape scene. The flavor of the time was poofy haired, as you said, numbskull sort of party rock. And here comes this screaming demon, wrecking machine. And so did it succeed by design or by default, or was it a combination of the right thing at the right time? And how much of that was your sort of maneuvering, if that's the right word? Because I know you kind of had a hand in going with the original cover for a certain number of albums and then intentionally switching over after there was some outrage out there. Tell me about the album, because it didn't, in my opinion, had no commercial potential at all. And I emphasize commercial.
You're dead on. And all your observations were all ones that I formulated myself. I'd gotten to a perception that they could be a really powerful underground band. Now, you see, in my personal history, I had young years in London. So I saw certain bands at certain times and saw interesting developments. There was a band that I adored called Dr. Feelgood, who put their first record out in mono. And it was entirely non-commercial. But my God, they would pack in the room up at the pub in Finchley to the point where the walls perspired. And when Wilco thrust his Telecaster in the air, it went through a styrofoam ceiling tile, and I swear to God, mosh pits didn't exist in those days, but that's probably the room where they were inseminated, and that was probably the band that caused the insemination.
Love it.
All right. So there's that kind of stuff in my blood vein. I knew we weren't going to get radio. So all my thinking was shaped by that perception straight away, which meant that when I sat down with Mike Klink as a producer, my instruction was really simple. Mike, just fucking get it on fucking tape. Do not play Roy Thomas Baker. Do not think you're that kind of producer. You're an engineer, and we want you to engineer this record. By the way, you're fucking brilliant in the work that you do with Ron Neverson with guitars. Michael Schenker sounds fabulous. All right. You're here because you're a great guitar engineer too. But the primary instruction is get it on tape. All right. That's what mattered, was capturing whatever that personality, whatever the chemical construct of that band was at that point, was getting directly on tape and not screwing around and rearranging it and then coming in with background singers, and then we change the arrangement here and even this out so as we can get it on radio. I didn't fucking care about radio at that point because I knew they wouldn't fucking care about us. The irony, as I sit here in my old ancient age, I cannot go anywhere on any day and not hear a Guns N' Roses song on the freaking fucking radio. All right? It was so on radio.
Wedding parties.
Yeah. When Axel showed me the card with the illustration on it, my immediate reaction was, that's magical. It's perfect. And if I were to pick one word to run through your question as a response, the word magic is probably one I would use all the way through. There were moments of magic. That's not to say that you can't create or encourage circumstances where something magical can happen. The cover was an incredible allegory. I mean, Hollywood spews out sex and death, sex and death, sex and death for entertainment constantly.
Right.
That little image was karma coming over the fence to crush the media that exploited women.
Right.
Most people didn't understand that, but to me it was like, fuck, that's pretty straightforward. But we knew it was going to upset people and that they wouldn't understand it. So we prepared for that. We had both covers printed before we released the album.
Right.
It's the same thinking as when we were in the UK and we're going, okay, we're going to put the first single out in the UK. Because my entire strategy with this band was aimed through London.
Yeah.
So we're going to put out It's So Fucking Easy. Why would we present that to the BBC? Do you think the BBC are going to play it after an ABBA song in the rush hour traffic? Nah. I doubt that's going to happen. The BBC are going to look at it and play it for a moment and go, it's so fucking easy. That goes from the can. You're banned from the BBC.
Right.
Thank you. Because that immediately goes into the English press. And now we're not part of the machine. We're not making records to go on the BBC so that RCA can sell another pop diva. We're a fucking rock and roll band, and you're going to have to fucking deal with us because it's going to be fucking easy for us. That's the attitude.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that's pulling strings. That's trying to grab attention. That's like when your band comes in to play the marquee for their first shows in England, we taunt the drunken Fleet Street journalist hacks. Axel killed his dogs so as he wouldn't have to have someone look after him while he's on tour. Oh my God, dog killers invade the United Kingdom. The British love their dogs more than they love their children. So we get press.
Right.
All right. And of course, where does all this come from? I remember sitting having a cup of tea in my apartment at the end of the day, watching this band on TV, saying things that were just, what? This is British television at tea time. And they're calling the interviewer a dirty fucker.
Right.
Sex Pistols.
Of course.
All right.
Yeah.
Next day, they are front page of every newspaper. They got bad, they got nationwide, and they got a reputation overnight, and they didn't even have to put their equipment in the van and drive up to Manchester and Birmingham and Sunderland and play gigs.
When I read that part in the book, I laughed out loud, and I said to myself, well, that saved a lot of gasoline. That saved a lot.
Yeah.
You didn't have to get new tires on the van. You didn't have to do anything except just kind of wait until you were in demand a little bit more to play the gig that you needed.
Well, the honest thing is, the business was incredibly competitive and of short patience. If you didn't produce results quickly, you'd be dropped.
Right.
You're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You never even went there. Okay, you could be dropped overnight. The advantage of it being an incredibly structured, formed, competitive business was that you could, if you were smart enough and you had some recall, you could look back at certain instances involving other people and other bands and go, how do I make that work for my crew?
Mm.
So, I mean, another further example is Use Your Illusions comes out, and I was terrified of it being a double album because I thought we would be absolutely crucified by the critics, and I thought people were out to crucify us anyway because we had sold so many copies of Appetite that we were just the biggest target for, oh, they're not that good, oh, they fucked up, oh, they stumbled. Mm. All right, so all those things had to be looked at and carefully thought about. And Axl wanted his debut record faster, his double record, faster than Physical Graffiti had appeared for Led Zeppelin. That was his thinking. My thinking was, okay, we're going to get killed. Okay. However, what if we do something Guns N' fucking Roses? What if we put out 2 single albums? No one's ever done that before. That's kind of got an attitude to it. Mm-hmm. And in terms of economics, I was extremely aware that the basis of the response to the band was working class and blue collar. And having to buy a double record on top of the groceries each week would be a strain. Whereas you could buy one record one week, one record the other week. Right. And then I explained both the band and Geffen Record that the economics of 2 separate records was far more productive than the economics of one double record. So, and of course, something great, something Guns N' Roses, something never done before, bullshit. What I remembered as a kid was Electric Ladyland, Jimi Hendrix. That was a double album, but Polydor also sold it as 2 single albums, so as you could buy one album at one point, buy one album at the other point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I had the recall and the memory to go, there's something that's been done before that could work for me now. Now all I have to do is go in and persuade them that this is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So nothing's ever new.
Yeah.
It's just whether you remember it or not.
Right.
One of the stories I love in the book, maybe my favorite, and it kind of dovetails into this this idea of using your resources and being smart with your strategy, and that is the 4 gigs that you and GN'R put together opening for the Stones. And I love, I mean, I love that chapter because honestly, as a reader, I'm starting to panic just reading it.
Yeah, me too. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, wait a minute.
The money is so astronomical, and this is in 1989 or something.
88.
88. So the money is outrageous. The 2 bands in question are, you know, you've got the Stones, arguably the greatest rock band of all time, and you've got GN'R, who are making a name for themselves as certainly the biggest rock band of the moment, and also going to go down in history as one of the greatest rock bands of all time. So you've got these 2 superpowers, and so just for me to set the stage for our viewers and our listeners. So the Stones basically approached you and said they originally wanted to take Guns N' Roses on tour.
They approached our agent, Bill Olson, at ICM. They didn't approach me.
Okay.
They went to the agent, which was the thing that they should do. Go to our agent, make an offer.
Okay, so, but the bottom line is the Stones were going to offer GN'R $50,000 a night to go on tour.
Yeah.
And what happened was the negotiations started going, you know, back and forth. And this is where I just started sweating bullets because I thought this was great. So you guys start thinking about it and say, well, we could do that on our own. We could do double that on our own. And so anyway, what it came down to was you settled on 4 gigs in LA. So you don't even have to fly out the band members. You don't have to put buses and trucks on the road. You basically set up the stage once in GNR's backyard, and you opened for the Stones 4 shows, and you did it for $1 million for all 4 shows, which in those days, I mean, that's still a lot of money, but in those days it was astronomical. So I loved the sense of the back and forth and the negotiation between these 2 superpowers. And then on day 1, the first gig, you had to send a police car to go get Axl to get him on stage on time. And then before the gig's over, he tells 77,000 people that these are the last GN'R shows you're ever going to see because he's fed up with Slash and some of the other members of the band. So you as a man, what's going through your head when you hear Axl basically threatening the extinction of the band right there in front of the Stones? And
well, after he had to send the cops to basically bring him in handcuffs if he needed to, just to get him on the stage.
Yeah, so you go through all that, and then you get him on stage, and he threatens basically the extinction of the band. As the manager, what is going through your head when you hear this?
That's going to make tomorrow difficult.
That's a good answer.
This is the mark of a manager, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a good answer.
There's the calm, reasonable answer to a question that would send the rest of us into hysterics. I think this is one of the things I got out of the book, and there's a part in the book where you said you can handle the phone calls that tell me somebody died, there's a riot, Axl's a no-show, but I think it speaks to the character of a manager, especially a manager of a huge band like this. How you stay cool under those circumstances, I have no idea. I could never do it.
Well, that's your responsibility. The art and people always contrive to be quote unquote cool. They buy their clothes, they do their hair in a certain way, they pick a certain woman, and so on and so forth. And really, when it comes down to it, the art of being cool is keeping your head when everybody else is losing theirs. And that is the art of being cool. It's do not overreact, maybe not even react at all, just absorb it and start to think it through. Don't lose your head. Lose your head, you'll get to be like Doug Goldstein, who on that first night of the Rolling Stones, when Axl was late, was running around in tears. That was my tour manager.
Right.
He's not going to be much help to me now, is he? I mean, he was blubbing like a baby, because it looked like Axl wasn't coming. But we had to figure something out. So something was figured out. My confession is that, yes, I have a temper. And it's the little things that upset me, that set me off. And I lose my head and I lose my cool. And there's a couple of little stories in the book that go to that and go to that admission, that there were certain things that I did that I look back and go, oh, fuck, I didn't do that, did I? What a fucking ass. What an asshole. But it's the little things that tend to trigger you. The worse a circumstance is, for me, the more I go cold. The worse the news, my head starts to get really cold.
How are you in heavy traffic?
Depends if I'm driving or the wife is driving.
Right.
It depends.
Right.
Now, in LA traffic.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant, I guess.
Yeah, in LA traffic, when I lived in LA, like a moron, sitting in a can, I'd yell, what the, the way people drive. Now I don't care. I don't give a shit. It's like I assume that most of the world is moronic. I assume that everybody in a vehicle in front of me is going to do something stupid, so watch them all carefully. And the one thing I love about cars now is that they have reverse lights, white reverse lights. So when people are backing out into the road, you get your warning. Oh, whoever thought of that? Fucking genius, well done. Because I'm watching in front of me and I'm watching the lights. I'm assuming some idiot's going to do something stupid, spoil my day.
Yeah.
Right.
I assume all that. And maybe you get to a point where I just can't be bothered to expend that energy anymore.
Yeah, everything turns into some kind of kung fu, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talk about, I'm sorry, Dave.
Go ahead, Jason.
I wanted to jump back to some connections that I picked up on the connections with Izzy. It seemed to, right out of the box, I could say right out of the book, their first few chapters, there's a few instances where the knock on the door is Izzy and he plops down on your couch and you're like, what's up? And he's got something for you to sort of, he wants it to get fixed because he's not having a good time. I sense that he really wants this to work and he's come to you for the best advice. And you, in a couple of places, you actually lean on him to be the one. Yeah, to be the one to get Axl to wake up.
Yeah.
And I thought that played into a lot of the.
Well, it tells you something about the relationship we have. Okay, born 10 years apart, exactly. And when he comes to me and he's complaining about somebody's behavior, I'm going to lean into him and say, we can't change him. What we can change is the fact that we know that we can't change him. We know how he's going to behave. So you need to deal with yourself.
Yes.
And I'll deal with myself. And that's me not going, oh, let me go out the door and go and talk to him and sort him out. No, it's not going to happen. What we have to do here is sort ourselves out because we know what to expect. So let's not get blown off the rails when the predictable happens.
Yeah.
That was basically what I was doing with this, was saying, dude, figure it out. You know, it's going to be this way. Okay? If it's going to be this way, then you have to adjust how you deal with it.
Why is it, in your opinion, why is it that Axl was and continues, it continues, I guess that answer's already obvious, but early on, why was he afforded so much power within the band when, you know, by all reports, it was a fairly democratic process as far as the songwriting. Izzy might have taken the lead, but was Axl just more lucid than the other guys and a little more business minded than the other guys?
No.
Or what? Why did he have so much control?
I didn't think that he had that much control until one night I went out with Slash. We went out on a Friday night. I got home Sunday.
Sounds right.
You were with Slash.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You knew what you were doing.
And during the conversation of that weekend, he brought up the fact that he found it difficult to connect to certain material on Use Your Illusions. Mm. And I put it to him that he and Duff and Izzy should express their reservations to Axl. And what I got from Slash was, and there are certain things that people say to you that sear themselves into your consciousness, and you never, ever forget what they said.
Uh-oh.
And he looked at me and he said, my dad has got a cupboard full of gold and platinum records, and he doesn't have a pot to piss in. I'm going to make the compromises that I have to make to keep the checks coming. Mm. And at that moment, I knew we were developing Axl democracy.
Mm. Right. Oh, yeah.
At that moment, I knew we were developing Axl democracy. And I did my best to keep things even, in that my responsibility, contracted and signed, was with 5 individual people collectively known as Guns N' Roses. I did not sign a contract with any one of those 5 individually. My responsibility was to the whole, to make the best decisions for the whole. Famously, Axl told me to cancel the Aerosmith tour.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
No, you rolled the dice.
I know.
You literally rolled dice.
Yes.
You let inanimate objects tell you what to do.
That tells you how fucking completely compromised I was on that decision. I had Axl very quietly saying in my phone, cancel a tour, and I have Izzy standing in front of me in my office going, Niv, what the fuck are we going to do? I am completely between a rock and a rock. What do I do here?
Yeah.
And it was a moment of inspiration, and it's a moment that makes me consider that there is a higher power, and the very thought to do what I did may come from my beta wave activity, which may be connected to higher power for all I know, because it certainly wasn't alpha wave thinking at the front of the brain. Oh yeah, we'll make our mind up with a couple of pieces of plastic here. But it came to my mind at that moment. And I remembered a book called The Dice Man, written by a guy called Luke Reinhardt. And do you know what no one has ever asked me?
What's that?
How come you gave Axel the best odds? Because what I said to the people in the room was, I throw 11 or 12, we go.
Yeah.
I gave Axel the odds.
You did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gave him the odds. And he lost.
Does he realize that? Do you think he knows that deep down? You actually gave that him a little bit more care in that choice?
With Axl Rose, forgive me for doing this.
You don't have to answer anything.
Hold on. With Axl Rose, if you want a simplistic statement from me, I will say, what we have here is failure to appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Twist.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
He has never, ever said thank you. I took a band that everybody said could not be made functional. The last executive act that I had for that band was to put Wembley fucking Stadium on sale. I think I did my job. What Axl didn't do was say thank you, ever. Izzy, bless his heart, bought me a Harley Davidson as a divorce present. There's the difference between the two of them. Axl never says thank you. Izzy calls me up and he says, hey, Niv, want to go for a ride? And I go, yeah, sure, why? Be nice to see you. It's a difficult circumstance. I'm sure he's feeling bad. Turn up at his house and there are 3 Harleys, 3, outside the house. And he looks at me and he goes, pick one. What do you mean? Which one do you want? It's yours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
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 Yeah. There's
Go ahead.
There's an old maxim. He who does not know himself will be defined by his fame. That's Axl.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
Izzy always knew who he was and who he is, and what he would do and what he wouldn't do, and what he wanted and what he didn't. Axl is defined by his fame. Izzy knows who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the Aerosmith tour started a wave of sales and the garnish of brand new fans who may or may not have known who they were yet. But I bet that during those dates with Aerosmith that Axl would preferred you to cancel, helped also raise everything. Everything blew up, I feel like, at that moment. I feel like that's when
Jason,
Yes, sir.
I have I'm old, I'm ancient, I have a 30-year-old perspective. I am amazed that we're still talking about this shit 30 years on. It blows my fucking mind.
Yeah.
However, where were you going with that again? Because you were getting on a set of rails that I want.
Yeah, I feel like that tour. Really took Appetite to another. It was already doing well, but
Jason,
after that moment,
Jason, you're right on the tracks.
Yeah.
Appetite was doing better than we all felt and understood. And as it turned out, the timing was such that if you were to ask me today, 30 years later, I would say the high point of the band's career was opening for Aerosmith. those shows were incendiary. And I felt really bad for Aerosmith trying to follow my band on stage. And bless their hearts for being hospitable and taking us out when no one else would. Everybody else had backed out, including AC/DC. But that is the magic moment. That's
what I took from that part in the book. Yeah.
We were talking earlier about meeting the girl in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And you find out she's got a brain.
Right.
The Aerosmith tour is when she takes her clothes off and your jaw just drops. That's the analogy.
Yeah.
That is the best body and the best sex you ever have in your entire life. It was the Aerosmith tour. That was the moment in the band's history. Nothing else will ever, ever, ever come remotely close to it. I don't care if you get 250,000 people into a soccer stadium and $10 tickets in Brazil. The Aerosmith moment was the moment.
Yeah, it's key. It's a key moment. I feel like you worked harder to get them on other tours and other gigs, whatever have you, other accomplishments. I feel like you worked harder to do other things. Well, I mean, not saying you didn't work hard to get the Aerosmith tour, but they didn't want to do it, or Axl didn't want to do it, and they did it anyway, and it was pinnacle. But there's a lot of hard work being done, you trying to get these guys some work, and I almost felt bad for you. You were having to do all of this stuff, and then you would turn around and somebody was there going, nope, sorry.
Well, simple things. When you're looking at something complex, you're always editing. It's like songwriting.
Yeah.
You've already got that much space to make a statement and try and make a statement that is engaging, maybe even a little bit fresh. But when you're looking at a complex situation, you're always editing things down to simple understandings and simple intentions. And with GN'R, I knew we weren't going to get radio. I thought we were going to get some MTV. I didn't realize that they were going to leave us at the altar until 6 months later. And how am I going to do this? And there's a whole pack of these fucking bands coming down Sunset all together. And it's this Music Connection magazine.
Yeah.
End of the year, 1986. Their last issue in December had 4 bands on it that they were touting might do something in 1987. I was fucking furious. There should have only been 1 band on that cover as far as I was concerned, and that's my fucking band, because the rest are all fakers hoping that they make it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So what do I learn from that? I learned, the world's perception is GN'R is just one of a gaggle of bands. And your primary responsibility is to get them to be the tip of the spear that goes anywhere. So when ICM come along and say, we'll package you up with a bunch of other LA bands, I'm going, the fuck we will.
Yeah.
Not ICM, CAA. That was CAA's plan. Let's package them up with a bunch of bands and put them on a bus and send them out there and see what happens. No, we're not going to go and do that. And we're not going to package them with all the other LA bands. What we are going to do is we're going to go to fucking England first and get our hands on the British press first. Again, background. All right? I come from London. I knew some key journalists. I knew the power of NME Sounds, Melody Maker. I knew what could be done with them because I did it with Motley Crue. I got Motley Crue to have a false appearance. When Tom Zutaut and I were going into a lecture saying, we've sold 15,000 units in LA alone, Elektra were going, really? In LA? No. We'd sold 15,000 units and I'd spread them everywhere I knew an account. In England, across America. I mean, you know, it'd been a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. But we went into Elektra and said, well, we're already at 15,000 units in LA. What are you going to do? Spin them up, which is what we wanted. You know, so going through England was so obvious to me and so essential. And I had to get there first. And that's what Live Like a Suicide was for. 42 grand was raised by 25,000 vinyls and 15,000 cassettes. And I got an independent distributor called Important to buy the whole lot and give me a check for 42 grand. And I went to Eddie Rosenblatt and he reached out for the check and I pulled it back and I said, Eddie, this is the UK. And he looked at me for a moment. He said, okay, kiddo, you got it. You can take that 42 grand, take your band to the United Kingdom. It was essential.
Right.
You know, we did those marquee shows and the word filters back that they event. And we had a couple of moments. So all those executives at Geffen and Warner Brothers sitting back in LA are going, maybe we've got something here. Maybe we got something a little international here. Maybe we can sell some records in Germany and the United Kingdom as well as here. Maybe we need to look at this a little bit more carefully. They seem to be making a little bit of a noise over in England. How did they do that?
Yeah. That's one of the things I enjoy about the book is all the strategy behind, you know, the next move. Because I don't think a lot of people only see the finished outcome and they don't have any idea.
Next move, you got to think on your feet. Next move might be a crisis that you don't see coming.
Right.
You've got everything beautifully planned out.
Yeah.
We've even done the marquee. We've got press in England. We've got a following developing in England. And now we're going to go to the next level because we're going to go over to the United Kingdom and open for Aerosmith, a protected situation. And I think that we can show up well against Aerosmith in front of for an English audience. We've got a kind of punky edge that they don't. All right. So I think we're going to make a bigger impact on the audiences than Aerosmith are. So my band is going to go back into the United Kingdom in October, and they're protected because they're an opening band, and Aerosmith fucking cancel.
Oh, shit.
Yes, exactly. Oh, fucking shit. Thank you. Awesome. There's my strategy completely de-wheeled right at that moment.
Right.
What do we do? An amazing producer called John Jackson was going to be the agent for GN'R. And we were discussing this problem on the phone. And he jokingly said, why don't you come and headline yourselves?
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point of time, we hadn't sold even 5,000 records in the United Kingdom. So for us to be going over there as a headliner was utterly fucking preposterous.
Right.
But I liked John, and I cottoned on to his intelligence, and I threw him one back. I said, John, call me tomorrow night and tell me what shows you think we could do as a headliner. And there was a silence on the other end of the phone. He thought it through and went, that fucking teabag in LA, God knows what he's fucking snorting or smoking, but he's out of his fucking mind. But he said, I will. And he came back the next night and he said, we do Nottingham, we do Manchester, we do Liverpool, we do Bristol. And then, he said, you'll love this, we close at the Hammersmith Odeon.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I went, okay, John, so you're telling me you think we can do this? He said, yeah, I think we might be able to pull it off. He said, it's a huge fucking risk. Do you want to take it? You know what, John? I do. And John had huge fucking posters made of the second album cover, The Cross,
Yeah.
with the cartoons.
Yep.
And we smothered England and Nottingham and Bristol and Birmingham with these posters.
You're
That was
talking those big subway posters.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got one above my head
Yeah.
from a UK tour, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We slathered them everywhere. And when I finally flew into London and started seeing them, I was like, wow, we kind of may have overdone this a little bit. But
I think it's awesome. It's very punk rock.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
John's in London. I know what punk rock is. I work for Virgin. The Pistols are on Virgin. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. So we sold 3,300 tickets for the Hammersmith Odeon.
That's fucking
which
great.
was 300 tickets short of a sellout. It was fucking unbelievable and phenomenal, and we pulled it off.
Wow.
At that time, Warner Brothers, we sold more tickets at the Hammersmith Odeon than Warner Brothers had sold albums. They were looking a little embarrassing. We've just come into your town and we've played one of your major venues and come within this of selling it out. And how many fucking records have you fucking sold? When we hit the stage at Donington, that was the following year. Warner Brothers had got up to 17,000 units the morning of the show. For the next 2 weeks after the Donington show, the only record that the Warner's pressing plant was pressing was Appetite to meet demand.
Wow.
I believe it.
Talk about caught with your pants down.
Yeah.
All right, but they caught up in the end. They sold a lot of records. Well done. Thank you, Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I'm sure Axel spent money well.
Let me ask you this. I know that you managed GN'R up until 91, I believe. And then your book details it better than I'm going to get into here, but you were basically fired. And my question to you is, what was your vision for the band beyond 1991? Where would you have taken GN'R post?
Around the fucking world. It was time to be a headliner everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I had no interest of where's the band in 2 years, what kind of songs we're going to have. At that point, having spent 3 or 4 years getting from Appetite to Illusions, the last thing on my mind was, what kind of creativity are we going to be looking at when we're going to record? My perspective was, now we go and rape and pillage the entire globe. We go round the world as a headline. And then when we come back, we make sure that everybody has their money put away, they've got their houses paid for, they've got their divorces paid for, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then we take some time off and see what happens and rest. Nothing's ever new. I was always greatly impressed by ZZ Top. Just disappearing. After, what was it, Tres Hombres?
Yeah.
They just, fucking great little record.
Oh, yeah.
They just disappeared. Heard nothing about them. Whatever. Where's my great little band from Texas? As far as I'm concerned, the only fucking band from Texas.
You're close.
And then they come back, and you go, oh my God.
Yeah.
So in my mental Rolodex, I put a card in the Rolodex that says, go and tour, maximize your tour, hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
Let everybody rest. Let everybody recharge. Let everybody rediscover what they want to do. Let everybody find out what they want to do at that point. Look at how ZZ Top did it. There's always somebody who's done it better than you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
I wanted to ask you this as well, and I mean this. This question is not intended to stir up controversy. I'm just generally. I'm genuinely curious. In your book, and also in Slash's book, he talks about the night that Todd Crew died. And for anyone watching and listening who's not aware, Todd Crew was the original bass player in a band called Jet Boy. He was let go from that band because his erratic behavior, and he struggled with his excesses and that sort of thing. Ended up as a roadie for Guns N' Roses, and died at the age of 21 after basically partying with Slash. And Slash in his own book, and you in yours, say that Slash basically administered the fatal dose of heroin that killed Todd. So my question in all this is, I've always been curious to know how Slash escaped any sort of legal liability from that. And again, I mean this completely out of curiosity. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand it all. But from your perspective, how was it that Slash, who basically admitted this, was there was really no legal consequences that I'm aware of? I don't know what happened behind the scenes or under the table or whatever. Is that anything you can speak to, or is that, do you not know exactly, or what?
Did he make that admission in his book?
I think so, yeah. I haven't read his book in a while, but I think it's been pretty well documented that
in which case, if he made that statement in his book, then any further statement by me is superfluous.
No, I'm not questioning his statement. I'm questioning how it didn't have some sort of ripple effect through Guns N' Roses as far as court cases or, any sort of legal action or whatever.
Whatever he says in his book is what you should reread.
All right. Fair enough.
You got Great White on a Judas Priest tour.
I saw that tour.
Me too.
You did?
Yeah.
I had never even heard of them before, and I was front row down here in Austin, Texas.
They were great,
and I had never heard of them before, and they were fucking great. And all I knew is they were just this band from LA, and of course, the only way you could find out about bands, if they were an opening band on a band you already had all their records of. If you had a favorite band, I loved always going and checking out the opening bands. Who's this band Great White? No, none of my friends knew. And they killed it. I was in the front row, and they killed it. Yeah. And of course I worship Judas Priest, but to see a band come out and work hard and get my attention, I always remember them,
Judas Priest. All right. That's one hell of a fucking learning curve. In terms of touring, we had just done a month with Whitesnake in the United Kingdom, and somehow I got the opening slot on the rock and roll tour of the summer for my unknown band who had not sold any tickets or sold any records yet. If you read in the book, you'll read that I froze my fucking ass off.
Yeah, you did.
Getting
twice, 2 or 3 times, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Went and sat outside Bill Kirbishley's office until he'd see me.
Well, to add gas to the fire, you had to fly from L.A. to sit in the cold.
Yeah, well, I didn't think picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Bill, I want the tour," would have much effect.
Yeah.
I had to show respect,
Shake the tree.
and shake the tree, and fly to his place and bend a knee,
Yeah.
and then expect to be told to fuck off.
Well, you knew. Yeah, you knew. I feel like you were setting yourself up for that anyway. But
Yeah, I thought that was going to be what happened, but you got to try.
yeah,
You know,
I'm impressed.
Where I give myself a little bit of props was, okay, I didn't even have the money for the tickets, but I knew how to get there by being a courier.
Yeah.
I knew who to stay with in London, a friend, so I didn't have a hotel bill.
You were in Camden, weren't you?
Yeah, and I could ride the underground, so, you know, I'm bad. I'm nationwide. I'm mobile, baby. I can get around. But anyway, with Priest, I knew Priest, you know, and maybe had a record. Don Dawkins was always playing them, and I was like, yeah, whatever, you know. When we got to Boston, off the end of the Whitesnake tour, I went over to the venue to say hello to Kirbishley, who I have to say at that moment looked like a wreck of a man. Ooh. And I looked at Bill and I went, holy fuck, is this what putting a tour together does to a human being? He looked wretched. But I sat with Bill and bent my knee and took my cap off and all that. And then fucking Halford comes out on stage. And I am sitting there going, you have got to be kidding me. This is how he sounds live. He's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
This is awesome. The power, the pitch, he's always on. I was just trying to pick my chin back up and put it back on my face. I'm sitting there going, oh, we're going to get fucking killed on this tour. This guy is utterly stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning. I mean, the power and the pitch was just... I don't care that he was singing goofy songs and that the real reason he was up there was so as he could wear his gay leathers 24 hours a day. The voice...
made me want to wear gay leathers 24 hours a day.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, see?
I mean, that's
changed everyone's perspective on a lot of things.
Yes, it did. And you maybe even could have tried out to replace him. But my God.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, it was meant to be. But the power he had was just phenomenal.
Yes.
And touring with Priest for 6 months was a huge learning curve. We were just a bar band the year before.
Yeah.
Going out with Whitesnake for a month, but going out with Priest for 6 months.
To give credit, to give credit, and I'm so sorry to interrupt, to give credit, I mean, Great White had just destroyed hometown Hollywood, Los Angeles. You guys had just done anything and everything you could have done. You got songs on the radio. You made all your friends jealous. You made Bobby Blotzer jealous. You made Don Dokken jealous.
Do you know how you get your songs on the radio?
Read your book. Read your book. That's how you get songs on the radio. No, how? Humor me. How do you get songs on the radio?
I'll tell you how you get songs on the radio. You buddy up with the cocaine supplier for the radio station.
I knew it.
Does that still work in 2025?
I have no idea, but it worked for a tea bag in 1982.
Yeah. Well, in back in those days, the whole like payola thing, I'm doing finger quotes, was always something that me and my friends who were aspiring to be whatever, to have a band and not have to deliver pizza or do a telemarketing job or whatever, just so we could not have to get a real job. Write the best fucking song you could. The payola thing was something we always heard about. Yeah, you gotta grease the goose somehow. And I always heard about deals made on the golf course. The owners of the radio station, the owners of the label, and the owner and the manager, and they were all meeting in the middle for a circle jerk to how you do this for me and I'll do this for you. Yeah.
I'll balance it out for you.
Yeah, do it. Our listeners want to know.
Getting them on the air the first time round, yes. I formed a relationship with the person who basically kept KMET going. Second time around,
yeah,
when I had to go back to DIY and do a record myself, and fund it myself and put it together myself, and we ended up with Shot in the Dark. I took a copy to KNAC. They said they'd play it. They played a little bit of it. I thought I'd chance my arm, and I went up to KMET and I delivered copies to KMET. The music director then was a lady called Judy McNutt. And Judy McNutt was actually into music. And she looked at the record, recognized the name, and went, "Oh, so they're still trying to fight their way back. I wonder if they've got anything." And she played the record. She then called me up and she said, "I'm going to put Face the Day into rotation." No independent records went into any kind of rotation on LA radio stations. It did not happen. Okay. She put it on. She called me a couple of weeks later and said, "I'm moving it up." It eventually went to heavy rotation, which meant it was being played at least 3 times a day. And this is on her judgment and the response she's getting from her phone call outs. That people are saying, "This is a fucking amazing track. We love it. Keep playing it," etc., etc. Whatever people say on phone call outs. And then she calls and she says, "Come up to the station, talk to me." And I actually spent an hour helping her put records back in the library. And we were just chit-chatting and talking, and she turned around to me and she said, "We've had a great fucking run on Face Today. And do you have anything else that's as good?" And I said, "Judy, no. It's a standout, obviously. But you know what? Can I ask you to do me a favor?" She said, "What?" "Do one more round of phone research before you pull it, just to see." I get a phone call about 2 or 3 days later, and she's, "You're not going to fucking believe it. This song is still growing. I'm going to hammer it for another 8 fucking weeks." And she did. 16 weeks in heavy rotation. Thank you, Judy McNutt. You are a fucking amazing woman in my life.
Wow.
Nice.
Great White, Face the Day. Yes, I remember that song was all over the radio.
Yeah, and I get signed by. The label dropped us. We went from EMI USA to Capitol. Capitol were the only people who went off the band at that point. So we re-signed to the label that dropped us in 1984.
Wow.
When does that happen?
Yeah, yeah. So that's another takeaway from your book is I know Guns N' Roses tends to overshadow everything, but you were also the manager for Great White during their peak years. Their greatest success, Once Bitten, Twice Shy, the debut album, which I love, all the MTV videos that everybody knows. You're the manager at that time. And I also think, Guns N' Roses gets a lot of the...
And writer and producer.
Yeah, you wrote some. Did you write lyrics or actual compositions?
And no, actual compositions. Sometimes it was just lyrics.
Okay.
Sometimes there was always there was always a certain degree of melody writing because of writing the content. Sometimes it was putting something into the structure. Always had to do it with somebody else in the band for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
For it to feel the way it should. I would hear a riff from Kendall. Lardy would play me a piano part. Something that spoke to me, I'd say, okay, let's develop this. And we would develop an arrangement, a sound bed. And then I'd take that away and go, okay, now I can make it into a fucking song. All right. So that was the way that we worked most of the time. Once in a blue moon, we'd key off a lyric to start with. The Angel song was a complete melody and lyric before we even started to put an arrangement to it. That literally... Kendall was living with me, and we were using the garage where I was living, to do some wood chopping. And I wanted to do some work, and he didn't. I went, fuck it. If I go over to the liquor store and get a couple of 6-packs, he'll stay, and we can do some work. I know how to bribe a Kendall. Get him a 6-pack. And I walked over to the liquor store and walked back to the garage. And by the time I got back to the garage, I could sing him the entire song. It came to me while going to the liquor store and coming back.
And which song? Which song is this?
Angel song?
The Angel song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on Twice Shy. Wow. I mean, that was an uncommon experience for me. I don't know where it came from. I sometimes wonder whether our spines are our antenna, and that we get fed things from a higher power down our spines, and it usually comes through. We have alpha waves and beta waves, and I've always found that the most creative mental condition you can be in is to minimalize your alpha wave activity. That's like driving a car or being really tired. It closes down the predictable, cliche thinking. And your beta wave activity brings more interesting things out. So you end up with something like House of Broken Love rather than Have a Nice Day.
Right.
One is alpha wave. One is beta wave, so anyways, where were we? I've lost the rails there.
Oh, that's all right.
I was going to ask you, and then we'll let you go, but on Jack Russell, one of the great voices ever in hard rock, rest his soul. Rest
his soul?
Yeah.
God help rock and roll heaven, because they'll be getting no rest whatsoever now that
that's where I was going with this. You're known for managing Guns N' Roses, which had to be a handful, but I'm guessing Jack Russell gave you a few gray hairs.
I'm sure you can imagine I've been asked many, many times, who was the worst in Guns N' Roses?
Jack Russell.
Yes, that was always my reply. Jack fucking Russell. GN'R did not come close.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
Yes, it is. Rock and roll requires a certain amount of spontaneity, so that everything doesn't feel contrived and false.
Yeah, sure.
Like an awful lot of stuff in the late 80s managed to do. One thing I could count on with Jack was spontaneity.
For better or worse, huh?
Yes. If you want to, what is rock and roll? There's a picture of Jack Russell. Usually scarpering down some back alleyway before somebody fucking shoots him.
Well, Alan, your book is called Sound and Fury. It's out June 24th. By the time people are watching and listening to this episode, it'll be out. It's available for you to read. I loved it. I got so much out of it. It's a really easy read, 220 some pages. As you say on the back cover, this is not an autobiography. It's not necessarily chronological. It's just little snapshots of your career and memorable moments. And man, when you manage the kind of bands that you managed at the level that you managed them, the stories are just captivating. I read through it in about 2 days. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm so glad you took the time to put pen to paper and put this out, because it's a great read. I highly recommend it.
I guess you never heard back. I guess you never heard back from the Reagan administration about Terry's signed autograph photo.
No,
okay.
The mask is still missing.
Yeah.
The mask never turned up. Guys,
people listening, that's a thing in a book, and the book that everyone needs to get the book and read when it comes out.
Sound and Fury. Yes.
Yeah. Alan, thank you.
I have to thank you both for firstly taking the time to read the book. That's very kind of you to give your time to do that.
Fantastic.
And thank you for your hospitality and the conversation.
Absolutely. The pleasure was ours, Alan. I really enjoyed it. Everyone go check out the book. It's called Sound and Fury. It's an amazing read. It's a quick and easy read. You won't be disappointed. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, Alan Niven, on the Talk Louder podcast.